Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. There is a woke mind virus, and I think we found patient zero, who the New York Times asked her if someone murders someone randomly, should they go to jail? Couldn't get her to say yes for that. She says no more police ever, at all, ever. She says our veterans are war criminals. How would you differentiate between equity and equality?
I don't know what the answer to that is.
Bill Maher drops a brutal reality check on Democrats, warning them about the rapid growth of democratic socialism within their party. Just watch.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists.
Now, if you think those policy proposals sound extreme, just wait until you see who got elected to actually push them, because apparently these ideas are winning primaries.
But now let's talk about the big earthquake on the left, because this is big news in this country. I don't know if you saw what happened in New York. There were 3 candidates for this. These are the primaries. They are going to win the election, so there are going to be 3 Democrats in Congress. These are Mandami's people. These are democratic socialists, I think very different than the Democratic Party. What happened is, for years we've been asking young people to vote. Well, now young people are voting, and they're voting to abolish the police, abolish prisons, unlimited immigration, so no cops, no prisons, no borders, proving for sure that eating Tide Pods does cause brain damage. There's one candidate, she will be a congressperson from New York's 13th district, who the New York Times asked her if someone murders someone randomly, should they go to jail? Couldn't get her to say yes for that. She says no more police ever, at all, ever. She says our veterans are war criminals. She said Kamala Harris and Joe Biden is a so there is a woke mind virus, and I think we found patient zero.
Now, Maher doesn't hold back here, and instead of debating socialism as if it's some new, untested idea, he shares a little history lesson with his audience, and we'll call it Bill Maher's Crash Course on Socialism.
We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century. A mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
A rude awakening indeed. And Bill is absolutely right. We don't have to guess what happens when countries abandon capitalism, because we've already watched it happen over and over and over again. And if you think Bill Maher is exaggerating, just wait until you see what the Democratic Socialists of America are openly promoting as their new policy agenda.
The Democratic Socialists just unveiled a sweeping new policy agenda. It calls for a dramatic overhaul of all 3 branches of the government. They say, on the plus side, you'll probably never have to pay a bill again. Take a listen.
You're able to take a day off and not have to worry. And you don't have to have a job just to pay the bills, because you don't have a lot of bills, right? Bills are no longer a thing because there's not for-profit businesses that are constantly trying to exploit you and trying to, put you into debt.
We wanted to lift up that demand very clearly and to state, abolish ICE, end ICE detention, end deportations, and punish the brutality of these federal agents.
Why do we have a Senate? Like a lot of people are going to see that and they'll be like, wait a second, why do I have a Senate? Like, what's so great about the Senate? I mean, I'm not sure about this, but I'm pretty sure the only popular senator is Bernie Sanders, and it's because he ran for president as a Democratic socialist.
Yes, Bernie Sanders. It's impossible to leave Bernie Sanders out of the conversation because for decades, Bernie Sanders has been the face of democratic socialism in America. Yet, when Bill Maher asked him to explain the difference between equality and equity, just watch for yourself.
EEI, are we confusing equality of opportunity with trying to guarantee equity in outcomes? Okay, that's interesting because I think this word equity has come into the language in the last few years, and before that we didn't hear it a lot, and I think a lot of people hear equity and they hear equality. That like it's the same word, and it's not the same word and the same concept. So how would you differentiate between equity and equality?
Well, equality, we talk about, I don't know what the answer to that is. Coming to think of it, equality is equality of opportunity. All right? We live in a society, we want all people to have whatever color your skin is.
Equity, I think, is more guarantee of outcome, is it not?
I think so. I think that's
okay. So which side do you come down on?
Equality.
Equality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, it seems like those two words have become central to progressive politics. Yet when Bill Maher asked Bernie Sanders to explain the difference, he glitched out and he couldn't answer. Just think about that for a second. This man spent decades promoting an ideology built around these concepts, and he can't even explain what they mean. But let's hear just a little more about the DSA's proposed policies.
The DSA is pushing for an expansion of the House, which they argue is a more accurate representation of the population. And they want the Supreme Court to be replaced by a judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. The new platform comes as the DSA hits 120,000 members, which they say is now the largest socialist organization in the country. The agenda will essentially serve as a rallying call as they try to build on the wins of left-wing candidates in recent primaries. Democrats are torn about how to tackle the rise of socialism within their party, but Senator Bernie Sanders says it's been a long time coming. Besides those things, the DSA also calls for defunding the Department of War, reparations, and wealth taxes. They argue capitalism hinders freedom and that our current political system is not true democracy.
So they want to eliminate for-profit companies, abolish ICE, end deportation, get rid of the Senate, abolish the Supreme Court, create new taxes on wealth, expand Congress, and overhaul the justice system. Could you imagine how that would affect our daily lives? And how exactly do they propose to tax the wealth when they plan on moving the country away from the free market system that's driven American prosperity? Now, you're probably wondering how these ideas actually became popular in the first place. Well, according to Bill Maher, it's because there's a growing generation that's been taught to view America as the problem.
The older generation just have a more positive idea of this country, America good.
Yeah.
And you go into the fact that a lot of this is because people older, we read about communism.
Yeah.
And socialism.
Yeah.
And kids today, I don't know what they're teaching them in school. Doesn't seem like a hell of a lot. But they have this idea that they live, not all of them, of course, but that they live in a bad country that has only done bad things.
Yeah.
And it's probably the worst place in the world if they can only find a way to get out.
Yeah, totally true. And you know who that attitude is most damaging for? Kids who come from difficult families or really stressed circumstances, or it's just not a happy place. In the old America, that kid was allowed to think, but if I open the door, I can go into a pretty just, good place in the neighborhood, in the area, in the country in a larger way. I feel like for kids from stressed places now, to tell them, essentially, it may be bad where you are, but don't worry, it's even worse outside in America, is not a nice thing to tell them. It starts them out with pessimism and a little paranoia and at a disadvantage. Look, to say the least, it's not perfect. To say the least, it's had an uneven history, but it is a great country and historically has been a good country.
And it does self-correct. It does correct more than other places.
Self-criticism is good.
Yeah.
Self-hatred is sick.
Okay.
Self-criticism can get you to a good place. Self-hatred is going to stop you dead.
Right. Well,
Bill Maher has spent years criticizing Republicans, Donald Trump, and conservatives. So when he's the one sounding the alarm on socialism, people might want to pay attention. This isn't coming from Fox News or a conservative commentator. It's coming from one of the most recognizable liberals in America. And even he believes the Democratic Party is moving in a direction that should really concern people. And he also makes a point that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. The ideas that are being pushed by today's Democratic Socialists aren't just slightly more progressive than we've seen before. They're talking about abolishing ICE, ending deportations, getting rid of for-profit companies, abolishing the Supreme Court, expanding Congress, and basically reshaping America's institutions from the ground up. Those aren't small policy adjustments. Those are extreme fundamental changes to the country. And Maher keeps reminding people that none of this is new. Every generation is told that this time socialism will be different. This time it'll be done the right way. But as we all know, history keeps telling a different story and repeating itself. Lots of countries have experimented with these ideas before, and the results have been nothing short of economic decline, government overreach, and millions of people looking for a way out. That's why he brought up places like Venezuela and Poland. One country moved toward free markets and prosperity, and the other embraced socialism and watched its entire economy collapse. Those are historical facts, and it's very concerning that people are ignoring that. And then we have Bernie Sanders, who's done more than anyone to normalize democratic socialism in America, struggling to explain the difference between equality and equity. The very same language that's shaped the progressive politics for years, but he can't even define the terms. That's insane. But at the end of the day, this is bigger than Bill Maher, Bernie Sanders, Mondami, or even the Democratic Party. Maher isn't warning Republicans, he's warning the Democrats that their party is embracing ideas that used to exist on the political fringe. And judging by what we're seeing in places like New York, those ideas aren't staying on the fringe anymore. And I feel like the reason these movements are gaining so much support is because they're promising people free stuff, free benefits, fewer responsibilities, and a quote-unquote easier life. So who wouldn't be tempted by the idea of paying fewer bills while working less? The problem is, these promises ignore basic economics. If you eliminate profit, then what incentive is there to invest, innovate, or create jobs in the first place? History has shown us over and over again that systems promising utopia always deliver the exact opposite. Just look at Cuba. It learned that lesson the hard way. So people shouldn't be so gullible to embrace promises that sound too good to be true. Because 10 times out of 10, they are. And whether you agree with Bill Maher on everything or not, I think he gets this one exactly right. At least in my opinion. But I would love to know your thoughts on this in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.